"I have nothing to cover myself," said the Apache woman behind the water. The morning sun rose slowly over the mountains, spilling golden light over the valley where Nanton lived. The forest was quiet, except for the soft songs of birds and the rustle of leaves in the gentle wind. Nanton, a young Apache woman, stepped lightly through the undergrowth, her bare feet brushing against the cool, damp earth. The forest was her home, her refuge, and the place where she felt most connected to the world. Every tree, every stone, and every stream held a story, and she knew them all. She made her way to the river that ran along the edge of the forest, its waters sparkling under the morning sun. The river was clear and cold, flowing over smooth rocks and creating little pools along the way. It was a place of life, a place where her people gathered for water, for food, and sometimes for quiet reflection. Today, Nanton carried a small bundle of clothes, knowing she would wash them and leave them to dry in the sun. Her movements were careful and graceful, a natural rhythm she had learned from her mother and grandmother. As she reached the water, she paused for a moment. She watched her reflection ripple in the river, the way the sunlight danced across the surface, and the tiny fish that darted under the water. She had always loved this river. It was calm, reliable, and safe, or so it had seemed. Today, however, something felt different. A tension hung in the air, faint but undeniable, like the quiet before a storm. She shook the feeling off and set down her bundle. Nanton knelt by the water, her hands gently pressing the fabric against the smooth stones. She dipped the clothes in the cool current, feeling the water rush over her fingers. The sound of the river filled her ears, a soothing melody she had known all her life. She began to scrub the clothes carefully, watching the dirt and dust disappear into the flowing water. The rhythmic motion was comforting, almost meditative, and for a moment she felt at peace. But the forest did not remain silent for long. From somewhere in the distance came a noise that did not belong, the heavy, measured steps of boots on earth, the metallic clink of equipment, and voices that spoke a language she did not recognize. Her heart tightened in her chest. The sound was unfamiliar, intrusive, and alarming. Slowly she turned her head, scanning the edge of the forest. Between the trees she caught glimpses of figures moving. Soldiers, strangers. People who did not belong to her land, who did not respect its ways, and who could bring danger to her and her family. Fear rose inside her, sharp and sudden. She had heard stories from elders about soldiers who came to take what they wanted, who forced families to leave their homes, who did not care for the river, the forest, or the people who lived there. Nanton's hands froze in the water. She looked at her reflection again, but this time she did not see calm. She saw worry, uncertainty, and the flicker of courage she would need to survive. Slowly, she moved behind a large rock near the water's edge, crouching low. Her heart beat loudly, echoing in her ears as she tried to make herself invisible. The soldiers came closer, their steps loud on the soft ground, their voices carrying over the river. Nanton's mind raced. If they saw her here, she would have no protection, no one to defend her, nothing to cover herself if they demanded it. The thought made her stomach twist. She whispered to herself almost without realizing it, "I have nothing to cover myself." It was a simple statement, but it carried the weight of fear, vulnerability, and the realization of how exposed she truly was. From behind the rock, she watched the soldiers carefully. One of them paused, glancing toward the river, and Nanton froze. Her breath caught. She reminded herself to stay still, to let the forest hide her, and to trust her instincts. She remembered the lessons of her grandmother, the way she had taught her to move silently, to read the signs in the trees and the river, and to trust the earth as a guide. Every rustle, every shadow, every bird's call could be a warning. Time stretched slowly. Nanton's eyes followed the soldiers' movements, noting their path and their manner. They seemed focused on the land around the river, unaware of her presence. Relief and fear mingled in her chest. Relief because she had not been seen, fear because she knew this could change at any moment. Her bare arms brushed against the cool rock and she shivered. The morning air was crisp, but it was the fear that made her body tense. She thought of her family, who were likely not far from the river, gathering food or tending to other chores. They did not know she was in danger, and she worried about what would happen if the soldiers discovered their presence. The thought of being separated from them, of being powerless to help, made her stomach knot with anxiety. She had to stay hidden, she reminded herself, not just for her own safety but for the safety of everyone she cared about. Minutes passed like hours. Nanton remained crouched, listening to every sound. The river continued to flow beside her, its gentle current a stark contrast to the tension in the forest. She took small sips of the water from cupped hands, trying to calm herself. The soldiers were moving on, their attention elsewhere, and slowly, the sharp edge of fear began to dull just enough for her to breathe. Even as the danger receded, Nanton knew the world had changed. The river that had always been a place of peace was now a place of threat. The forest, her safe refuge, now held shadows of uncertainty. And yet she also felt a flicker of determination, a quiet flame that reminded her she could survive, that she could move carefully, wisely, and find safety. She remembered her grandmother's words again. The earth is a guide, the river is a teacher, and courage comes from understanding both. With the soldiers moving away, Nanton slowly rose from her hiding place. Her body ached from crouching, but her spirit was alive. She gathered her bundle of wet clothes and wrapped it as best as she could. The forest floor was soft under her feet, and she moved with care, listening to the sounds around her. Each step was deliberate, each movement mindful. She was learning not just to survive, but to respect the land in a new way, as a shield, a friend, and a teacher. She paused once more by the water, looking at her reflection. She saw her fear, yes, but she also saw strength. She saw a young woman who had faced danger without losing herself, who had trusted her instincts, and who had learned to move with the rhythm of the forest. The river sparkled in the morning sun, and Nanton felt a small sense of hope. She had nothing to cover herself, she had nothing to protect herself with, yet she still had her courage, her mind, and her connection to the land. And for now, that was enough. Slowly, she turned away from the river, moving back toward the deeper forest. Each step was careful, but each step was also full of resolve. She would need to warn her family, she would need to move carefully, and she would need to find ways to protect herself and those she loved. The morning was young, and the forest was alive with possibilities. Nanton walked on, the sunlight filtering through the leaves, the river singing behind her, and the quiet knowledge that even in the face of fear, she could survive. By the time she disappeared among the trees, the soldiers were nothing more than distant figures, and the valley was calm again. But for Nanton, the experience had changed her forever. She had felt vulnerability, fear, and uncertainty, but she had also discovered strength, resilience, and courage. She knew that the journey ahead would be difficult, but she also knew that she could face it, one careful, mindful step at a time. Nanton moved cautiously through the forest, her bare feet pressing against the damp soil, careful not to snap twigs or disturb the fallen leaves. Every sound around her seemed louder now, the rustle of leaves, the occasional call of a bird, and the faint trickle of water in a distant stream. Her heart still raced from the encounter at the river. The words she had whispered to herself, "I have nothing to cover myself," lingered in her mind. They were more than just words. They were a warning, a reminder of how exposed she was in the face of strangers who did not belong in her land. The forest was dense, and the sunlight filtered through the canopy in streaks, creating patterns of light and shadow on the ground. Nanton moved slowly, remembering the lessons her grandmother had taught her about the forest. Every plant, every stone, every animal could be a guide. She kept her eyes sharp, scanning for any sign of danger and her ears alert for unusual sounds. Even a distant shout or the snapping of a branch could signal the approach of the soldiers. As she advanced deeper into the trees, she caught sight of a deer in the distance. It froze for a moment, staring at her with gentle, curious eyes before bounding away silently. Watching it reminded Nanton of the delicate balance of life in the forest. Everything had a role, and everything could be threatened. The soldiers she had seen at the river represented a disruption of that balance, and she felt a deep sense of responsibility, not just for herself, but for her family and her people. She thought of her mother and father, of the elders and the children in the tribe. They had lived on this land for generations, guided by the rhythms of the seasons, the rivers, and the mountains. They had always respected the earth, taken only what they needed, and protected their own. And now, strangers were forcing them into fear and uncertainty. Nanton's chest tightened with worry. She needed to find them, to warn them, and to help them stay safe. Moving carefully, she followed the faint trail of her family's path through the forest. She could see footprints in the soft earth, the impressions of moccasins and bare feet, and small signs of human activity. A piece of cloth snagged on a branch, a broken twig that indicated a hurried passage. Each sign gave her hope, but also urgency. She knew her family might be moving quickly, trying to avoid the soldiers who could appear at any moment. As she rounded a bend in the forest, she glimpsed smoke rising in the distance. Relief washed over her. It was a sign of life, perhaps a campfire of her family or other members of the tribe. She picked up her pace, moving with renewed energy but still mindful of her surroundings. The forest could hide her, but it could also conceal danger. She needed to remain vigilant. Finally, she arrived at a small clearing where a few of her people had gathered. Her heart lifted at the sight of familiar faces. Her younger brother, clutching a small bundle of possessions, looked up and smiled when he saw her. Her mother and father were there as well, speaking quietly to the elders. Nanton approached them cautiously, aware that even in the presence of her own people, she needed to explain what she had seen. She took a deep breath and recounted the events at the river. She told them about the soldiers, about how they had moved through the area, and about the danger that lurked nearby. Her voice trembled at first, but as she spoke, her courage grew. She emphasized that they needed to be careful, to move quietly, and to avoid drawing attention to themselves. Her words were met with nods of understanding and worry. The elders whispered among themselves, discussing what to do next, and Nanton felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. The tribe quickly began to organize. They gathered their belongings, moving with a quiet urgency that reflected both fear and determination. Children were guided gently by their parents, and the elders offered advice based on years of experience in the forest. Nanton moved among them, helping where she could, her mind racing with strategies for staying hidden and safe. The forest, once a familiar and peaceful place, had become a battleground of shadows and uncertainty. As they moved deeper into the forest, Nanton noticed the changes in the landscape. The trees grew taller and closer together, forming natural barriers that could provide cover. Small streams offered fresh water, and patches of edible plants reminded them that the forest could sustain them if they were careful. She felt a renewed sense of connection to the land. The same forest that had concealed danger now offered protection, and she began to understand the dual nature of her surroundings, both threatening and nurturing, depending on how one approached it. Hours passed as the tribe moved cautiously. Nanton remained alert, her eyes scanning the trees for any sign of the soldiers. She learned to read the subtle signs of the forest. A broken branch could indicate a path, the sudden quiet of birds could signal danger, and the scent of smoke in the air could be a warning of human presence. She became increasingly skilled at moving silently, her body attuned to the rhythms of the forest. At one point, they came across a small cave hidden among the rocks. It offered shelter and a vantage point from which they could observe the surrounding area. The elders decided to rest there for a short while, allowing the children to drink from a nearby stream and the adults to eat small portions of dried meat and berries. Nanton took a moment to sit by the cave entrance, her thoughts drifting back to the river. She remembered the fear she had felt, the vulnerability of being exposed, and the determination that had carried her through. She realized that survival was not just about avoiding danger. It was about understanding it, learning from it, and using that knowledge to protect oneself and others. The soldiers were a threat, yes, but so was ignorance, hesitation, and panic. By staying calm and aware, she could help her family navigate the dangers of the forest. This understanding gave her a quiet strength, one that she could feel in her bones and in the steady rhythm of her breath. As evening approached, the tribe continued their journey. The sun dipped low behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Nanton felt a mixture of exhaustion and alertness. Her muscles ached from walking and crouching, but her mind remained sharp. She knew that the soldiers could be anywhere, and that the forest, while offering cover, also required constant attention. Every sound, every movement, and every smell could be a clue to safety or danger. By nightfall, they reached a hidden valley surrounded by thick trees and rocky outcrops. It was a perfect place to camp, offering protection and a sense of security. The elders quickly set up a small, discreet fire, just enough to provide warmth and light without attracting attention. Nanton helped gather small branches for the fire, careful to keep it low and controlled. The children huddled near their parents, and the tribe settled in for the night, exhausted but grateful for a temporary haven. As Nanton lay near the fire, her eyes fixed on the stars peeking through the canopy above, she reflected on the day. She had faced fear, observed danger, and helped guide her people to safety. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. She thought again of her whispered words at the river, "I have nothing to cover myself," and realized that while she had been physically exposed, her mind, her instincts, and her connection to the forest had provided a different kind of protection, one that was even stronger than cloth or armor. The night was quiet, broken only by the distant calls of nocturnal animals and the gentle crackle of the fire. Nanton felt a sense of peace, knowing that her family and her people were safe for now. She also knew that the journey ahead would be long and filled with challenges. The soldiers could return, and the forest could hide new dangers, but she felt ready. She had learned to trust herself, to trust the land, and to trust the strength that came from knowledge, courage, and community. As she drifted into a light sleep, Nanton felt a quiet determination settle within her. She would continue to guide her people, to protect her family, and to face whatever challenges came their way. The river, the forest, and the mountains were more than just home. They were allies, teachers, and sources of strength. And Nanton, though young and sometimes afraid, had learned that she could survive, thrive, and inspire those around her. The night passed, and the first light of dawn crept into the valley. Nanton awoke with renewed energy, ready to continue the journey. She knew that every day would bring new challenges, but she also knew that courage, vigilance, and unity would carry her and her people through. The forest was alive with possibility, and Nanton was ready to face it, one careful, courageous step at a time. The morning air was crisp and fresh as Nanton led her family and the other members of the tribe deeper into the forest. The valley where they had rested during the night was quiet, filled only with the gentle sound of the wind moving through the leaves and the distant calls of birds greeting the dawn. Nanton's feet pressed lightly against the soft earth, and she moved with careful awareness. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, and every distant sound made her pause, alert to any possible danger. She knew the soldiers could return at any moment, and the safety they had found in the valley was temporary. As they traveled, the tribe moved in small, quiet groups. The children stayed close to their parents, holding hands or clinging to sleeves, and the elders walked slowly but steadily, their eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of threat. Nanton stayed near the center, keeping an eye on everyone while also watching the forest ahead. Her mind was focused on strategy, thinking about the safest paths, the places where they could find water, and the areas where they could hide if someone approached. The forest grew denser as they moved further from the river. Tall pine trees and thick underbrush created a natural barrier, hiding the tribe from view. Nanton felt a sense of relief. The forest, which had once seemed threatening, now became a shield. She remembered her grandmother's lessons. The forest can be both a friend and a protector if you know how to move with it. Each step required patience, attention, and respect for the land. Hours passed, and the journey became physically demanding. The forest floor was uneven, littered with fallen branches, rocks, and roots. Nanton's legs ached, but she pressed on, helping those who struggled and encouraging the younger members to keep going. She shared small bits of food she had packed, a few dried berries, some pieces of nuts, with the children to keep their energy up. She also reminded them to drink water from small streams along the way, teaching them to move quietly and carefully even as they paused. At one point, they came across a shallow stream winding through the trees. The water was cool and clear, flowing over smooth stones. The children knelt at the edge, cupping their hands to drink, while the adults washed their faces and refreshed themselves. Nanton watched them closely, making sure the sound of their movements did not carry too far. She also used the moment to observe their surroundings. She noticed footprints in the soft mud on the banks of the stream, fresh, human footprints that did not belong to their group. Her heart quickened. The soldiers could be nearby. She motioned to the tribe to stay quiet and signaled that they should move away from the stream immediately. The elders nodded, understanding the urgency. They packed their few belongings quickly and silently, leaving no trace behind. Nanton led the way, choosing a path that wound through thicker trees and rocky outcrops. The forest became a maze of shadows and sunlight, a place where even the slightest noise could give away their position. Despite the fear and exhaustion, Nanton felt a strange sense of determination. She realized that their survival depended not only on caution but also on adaptability. She encouraged the younger members to notice the signs of the forest, the sound of animals, the patterns of leaves, the position of the sun. Each observation could help them avoid danger, find food, and remain hidden. The forest, once only a place of beauty, now became a teacher in the most practical way. By late afternoon, the tribe reached a rocky hill that overlooked a small valley. From this vantage point, they could see their surroundings and plan the next part of their journey. Nanton scanned the area carefully. There was no sign of the soldiers, but she remained cautious. She knew that appearances could be deceiving. The soldiers might be hiding, moving silently, or watching from a distance. She reminded herself that caution was a constant necessity. The elders gathered with Nanton to discuss their next move. They decided to follow the contours of the land, moving through narrow paths that would provide cover and make it difficult for anyone to follow them. The children were told to stay close, and the adults formed a protective circle around them. Nanton walked beside her younger brother, holding his hand briefly to reassure him, before returning her focus to the path ahead. As they descended the hill, the forest opened slightly, revealing patches of grass and wildflowers. Nanton allowed herself a moment to admire the beauty of the land. Despite the danger, there was life all around them. Birds perched on branches, butterflies dancing in the sunlight, and the gentle sway of the trees. She realized that even in times of fear, there was still a need to notice and respect the beauty of the world. It reminded her why her people fought to protect this land, why they belonged here, and why survival was worth every effort. Suddenly, a sound broke through the quiet, the faint crunch of footsteps on leaves. Nanton froze, motioning for the tribe to stop. Her heart pounded as she scanned the trees. She could see nothing clearly, but her instincts told her that someone or something was nearby. She gestured for everyone to move deeper into the forest, where the trees grew closer together and offered more concealment. The tribe followed her lead silently, trusting her judgment and her knowledge of the land. They moved carefully, using every trick Nanton had learned from her grandmother. They stepped lightly, avoided dry leaves and twigs that could snap, and kept to shadows whenever possible. The footsteps seemed to follow them, or at least that was what Nanton feared. She could feel the tension building, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Every decision mattered, every misstep could be dangerous. She reminded herself to stay calm, to focus, and to keep the tribe moving safely. After what felt like hours, the sound faded. Nanton allowed herself a quiet sigh of relief, though she remained vigilant. They reached a small clearing where they could rest briefly. The elders decided to take a short break, giving the children a chance to drink from a nearby stream and eat small portions of food. Nanton sat on a flat rock, her legs aching but her mind alert. She thought about the day, about the journey so far, and about the dangers that still lay ahead. She realized that this journey was teaching her more than survival skills. It was teaching her leadership, courage, and the importance of thinking ahead. She understood that fear was natural, but it could be managed. She also realized that the tribe's strength depended on trust, trust in one another, in the land, and in her guidance. That trust gave her confidence, and with it, she felt a quiet power growing inside her. As evening approached, the tribe prepared to set up a small, hidden camp. Nanton helped the elders choose a location that was shielded by trees and rocks, with a clear view of the surrounding area. They gathered dry leaves and small branches for a fire, careful to keep it low and controlled. The children were taught to stay close and remain quiet, while the adults prepared simple meals. Nanton sat near the edge of the camp, watching the fire and thinking about the river where her journey had begun. The memory of that morning stayed with her, the fear, the vulnerability, and the whispered words, "I have nothing to cover myself." Now, months of experience and careful observation had given her a sense of control. She had learned that even when exposed or unprotected, she could rely on her mind, her instincts, and the forest to guide her. She understood that courage was not about being fearless, but about acting wisely despite fear. Night fell, and the forest was filled with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. The tribe huddled near the small fire, sharing stories and quietly tending to one another. Nanton watched over them, feeling both the weight of responsibility and the quiet satisfaction of knowing they were safe, for now. She knew the journey would continue, and new challenges would arise, but she also knew that they could face them together. As she lay down to rest, Nanton's mind wandered to the river, to the soldiers, and to the lessons she had learned. She realized that survival was about more than escaping danger. It was about understanding it, respecting it, and using knowledge and courage to protect oneself and others. The forest, the river, and the land had become her teachers, and through them, she had discovered strength she had not known existed. The night passed slowly, with the stars shining through the gaps in the trees. Nanton remained alert even in sleep, her senses attuned to the forest around her. She knew that tomorrow would bring more movement, more decisions, and more challenges, but she also knew that she was ready. She had faced fear, guided her people, and learned to navigate the forest with skill and care. She had nothing to cover herself physically, but she was covered with knowledge, courage, and determination, the strongest protection of all. As the first light of dawn filtered through the trees, Nanton awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. She helped the tribe gather their belongings and prepare to move again, leading the way with confidence and careful attention. Every step was deliberate, every movement mindful. The journey was far from over, but Nanton knew that together, with patience, courage, and respect for the land, they could face whatever came next. The forest stretched out before them, full of both challenges and possibilities, and Nanton was ready to meet them head-on, one step at a time. The sun rose over the forest, sending warm golden light through the tall trees. Nanton stood at the edge of the clearing, her eyes scanning the land ahead. The forest had become a familiar guide, but today she felt a deeper sense of responsibility. The tribe depended on her to lead them safely, to make careful decisions, and to stay alert. Every sound of the wind, every rustle of leaves, and every distant animal call could tell a story if she listened closely. The tribe had grown quiet as they prepared to move deeper into the forest. Children clutched their parents' hands, and the elders walked slowly but steadily. Each person understood that today required patience, caution, and unity. Nanton took a deep breath and began leading the way, moving with careful precision. She followed paths hidden under thick underbrush, stepping lightly over roots and rocks, listening for anything unusual. Hours passed, and the forest seemed alive with whispers and shadows. Birds flew overhead, and small animals scurried in the underbrush, reminding the tribe that the land was full of life. Nanton felt a sense of calm in the movement. She knew that danger might be near, but she also knew that the forest offered protection. The trees, rocks, and streams could hide them, guide them, and sustain them if they were careful. Every step was a lesson, and every breath reminded her of the delicate balance between caution and trust in the land. Around midday, the tribe reached a narrow path that led through a rocky section of the forest. The rocks created natural barriers on either side, forming a hidden corridor. Nanton slowed her pace, signaling for the others to follow quietly. The children whispered softly to each other, and the elders nodded, understanding that the path required vigilance. Even though the corridor provided cover, it also limited their ability to move freely. Nanton knew that anyone observing from above could spot them if they were not careful. As they moved, she noticed signs of previous travelers, footprints, broken twigs, and flattened grass. Her heart raced. Could the soldiers have passed through here? She motioned for the tribe to stop and listened. The forest was quiet, but every sound seemed amplified. The distant call of a bird, the rustle of leaves in the wind, even the faint trickle of water from a hidden stream. Nanton scanned the rocks and trees, searching for any sign of danger. Nothing appeared, but she did not lower her guard. Once the path seemed safe, Nanton led the tribe onward. They moved slowly, their eyes and ears alert. She reminded the children to step lightly, to avoid snapping twigs, and to follow the rhythm of the forest. The younger ones looked up to her, trusting her guidance, and she felt a quiet sense of pride. She realized that leadership was not only about making decisions, but also about showing confidence and courage. Her calmness gave the tribe strength, even when fear tried to take hold. By late afternoon, the forest opened into a small valley. Here, the trees were thinner, and sunlight reached the forest floor in warm patches. Nanton felt a mixture of relief and caution. The open space allowed the tribe to rest briefly, but it also meant they could be more easily seen. She signaled for the group to move quietly to the edge of the valley, near a cluster of rocks and trees that could offer concealment. The elders quickly assessed the area and approved. While the tribe rested, Nanton noticed small patches of edible plants and berries along the edges of the clearing. She pointed them out to the children, teaching them which plants were safe to eat and which were not. She also reminded them to take only what they needed, respecting the land while using it to sustain themselves. The children listened carefully, absorbing every word. Nanton knew that this knowledge would help them survive in the forest and foster a deeper connection with the land. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, and the tribe knew they needed to find a secure place to camp for the night. Nanton led them to a hidden grove, shielded by tall trees and thick underbrush. The elders examined the area and approved, noting that it was hidden from view and offered access to a small stream nearby. The tribe worked together to set up a discreet fire, small enough to provide warmth and light but low enough to avoid attracting attention. Nanton helped gather branches and leaves, careful to keep the fire controlled. As night fell, the forest transformed. Shadows stretched across the ground and the sounds of nocturnal animals filled the air. Nanton sat near the fire, watching the tribe quietly tend to each other. She thought about the journey so far, the river, the soldiers, and the constant movement. Each step had taught her something new about courage, responsibility, and the importance of unity. She realized that survival was not just about avoiding danger, but about understanding it, respecting it, and using knowledge and strategy to navigate it safely. The night grew colder, and the children huddled close to their parents, seeking warmth and comfort. Nanton moved among them, offering words of reassurance and helping them settle. She noticed the fear in their eyes, but also the trust they placed in her. She felt a quiet strength, knowing that she had guided them safely this far. The forest, with all its mysteries and dangers, had become a place where courage, awareness, and care could protect them. Around midnight, a distant sound reached Nanton's ears, a faint rustling in the trees. Her heart beat faster, but she remained calm. She motioned for the tribe to remain still and silent. Her eyes scanned the shadows, but there was no clear sign of danger. It could have been an animal, the wind, or a distant movement in the forest. She reminded herself that fear could mislead, and she focused on careful observation rather than panic. The rest of the night passed quietly. Nanton stayed alert, listening and watching while the tribe slept. She thought about the lessons her grandmother had taught her, how to trust instincts, how to move quietly, and how to read the signs of the forest. Each lesson had proven valuable, guiding her and the tribe through uncertainty. She realized that her strength came not only from courage but from knowledge, patience, and a deep connection with the land. As dawn approached, the first light filtered through the trees. Nanton gently woke the tribe, preparing them to move once more. They needed to continue their journey to find a safer location further from the soldiers and closer to food, water, and natural cover. The forest stretched ahead, full of possibilities and challenges, and Nanton felt ready to face them. Her mind was sharp, her senses alert, and her determination unwavering. The tribe moved quietly, following Nanton's lead. She guided them through narrow paths, across small streams, and along hidden trails that only someone familiar with the forest could navigate. Along the way, she pointed out small signs of the soldiers' presence: broken branches, disturbed earth, and faint footprints. Each discovery reminded them to remain cautious, to move with purpose, and to trust Nanton's guidance. By late morning, they reached a small ridge overlooking a valley below. Nanton paused to observe. From this vantage point, they could see the land ahead, plan their next steps, and avoid any paths that might lead them into danger. She noted the areas where water was accessible, where food might be found, and where cover could be used if needed. The tribe watched her closely, absorbing her observations and learning from her experience. As they descended into the valley, Nanton noticed the signs of wildlife: deer tracks, rabbit burrows, and bird nests. She explained to the children how these signs could be used to find food, understand the seasons, and navigate the forest. The children listened intently, fascinated by her knowledge. She smiled quietly, knowing that teaching them these skills was as important as leading them safely. The afternoon passed with careful movement. The tribe stopped occasionally to rest, drink from streams, and gather small amounts of food. Nanton remained vigilant, aware that danger could appear at any moment. She noticed changes in the forest: the shift in bird calls, the sudden quiet in certain areas, and the smell of smoke carried faintly on the wind. Each observation helped her make decisions, keeping the tribe safe and alert. As evening approached, they found another hidden grove to set up camp. This time, it was surrounded by thick trees and large rocks, providing natural protection. The tribe worked together to prepare a small, controlled fire, gather food, and settle for the night. Nanton moved among them, offering guidance and reassurance. She reminded the children to rest quietly and the adults to remain alert. The night was long, but the tribe felt safer with her leadership and careful planning. Nanton sat near the edge of the camp, looking out at the forest. She thought about the journey so far, about the river, the soldiers, and the lessons learned in the forest. She realized that courage was not about being fearless, but about facing danger with knowledge, awareness, and careful action. She felt a quiet pride in herself and her people, knowing they had survived the day, moved safely, and learned valuable lessons along the way. As the fire burned low, Nanton's eyes drifted to the stars shining through the trees. She felt a deep connection with the forest, the land, and her ancestors. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but she knew that together, with patience, courage, and trust in one another, they could face whatever challenges came next. The forest, which had once seemed threatening, had become a teacher, protector, and guide. And Nanton, though young and sometimes afraid, had discovered strength she had never known existed. The sun rose slowly over the forest, casting golden light through the branches and onto the forest floor. Nanton woke early, her eyes adjusting to the soft glow filtering through the trees. She listened to the quiet sounds of the forest, the distant calls of birds, the rustle of leaves in the wind, and the gentle trickle of a nearby stream. The night had been calm, but she knew the day would bring new challenges. She quietly roused the tribe, guiding them to pack their few belongings and prepare to move. The forest stretched endlessly before them, a mixture of light and shadow, of paths safe and dangerous. Nanton led the tribe with a careful, steady pace. Each step was deliberate, every movement mindful. The children followed closely, learning from her example, while the elders walked beside them, offering guidance and encouragement. The journey had been long, but it was far from over. Nanton knew that their survival depended on constant awareness, careful observation, and unity. As they moved, Nanton reflected on how far they had come. From the river where fear had first gripped her, to the deep forest trails, she had grown in courage, awareness, and wisdom. She realized that the journey had taught her more than survival skills. It had taught her leadership, resilience, and the importance of staying calm in the face of fear. The whispered words she had said months ago, "I have nothing to cover myself," now carried a different meaning. She understood that true protection came not from clothes or weapons but from knowledge, instincts, and the bonds of community. By late morning, the tribe reached a small ridge overlooking a wide valley below. Nanton paused to observe the land carefully. From this height, she could see where the streams flowed, where patches of edible plants might grow, and where rocky outcrops could offer natural protection. She instructed the tribe to rest briefly while she scouted the area ahead, moving carefully through the trees and keeping low to avoid being seen. The forest floor was uneven, covered with roots, fallen leaves, and rocks. Nanton moved with a quiet grace, her senses alert to every sound and movement. She noticed small signs that animals had passed this way recently, tracks of deer, rabbits, and birds, which could also indicate areas safe for water and food. She also looked for subtle signs of humans, knowing that the soldiers could still be nearby. She found no evidence, but she remained cautious, trusting her instincts. Returning to the tribe, Nanton shared what she had observed. She pointed out safe paths through the valley, areas to find water, and patches where food could be gathered without drawing attention. The elders nodded, impressed by her careful observations and ability to guide the tribe with both safety and wisdom. The children listened with wide eyes, absorbing every word and gesture. Nanton felt a deep sense of pride and responsibility. She knew that teaching them these skills would help them survive and thrive long after this journey was over. As they descended into the valley, the tribe moved carefully, using every lesson they had learned in the forest. Nanton reminded them to step lightly, to watch the shadows, and to respect the land. She noticed small changes, the position of the sun, the direction of the wind, and the movement of birds, and used these clues to navigate safely. The forest was alive with signs, and Nanton's growing knowledge allowed the tribe to move confidently while remaining hidden. Along the way, they discovered a small stream winding through the valley. The water was clear and cool, a welcome source of refreshment. The children drank eagerly, while the adults filled small containers for later use. Nanton taught the younger members how to drink safely from natural sources, emphasizing the importance of cleanliness and patience. She also encouraged them to observe the surroundings, pointing out signs of animals and plants that could be useful for survival. The afternoon sun began to dip toward the horizon, signaling that it was time to find a place to rest. Nanton led the tribe to a hidden grove surrounded by tall trees and thick underbrush. The elders approved, noting that it was well hidden and offered natural protection. Together, they gathered branches and leaves to create a small, controlled fire. Nanton helped carefully, ensuring the flames remained low while providing warmth and light. The children huddled near their parents, listening as the elders shared quiet stories of the forest and their ancestors. As night fell, the forest seemed to settle around them. The air was cool, filled with the scents of pine and earth, and the distant calls of nocturnal animals created a gentle lullaby. Nanton sat near the fire, watching the tribe quietly prepare for sleep. She thought about how far they had come, from the river, where fear had first gripped her, to this hidden grove, where they found temporary safety. Each step had taught her something new about courage, leadership, and the importance of staying calm and aware. The fire crackled softly, and the tribe huddled close for warmth. Nanton spoke softly to the children, reminding them of the lessons they had learned about the forest, the river, and survival. She explained how courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act wisely despite it. She emphasized the importance of observing the land, listening to instincts, and trusting one another. The children listened intently, their eyes shining with understanding and trust. Later that night, Nanton took a moment to walk a short distance from the camp. She moved quietly, letting the forest guide her. The trees, rocks, and streams had become familiar friends, offering protection, guidance, and life. She knelt by a small stream and cupped the cool water in her hands, reflecting on the journey so far. The memory of the river, the soldiers, and the whispered words, "I have nothing to cover myself," came to her mind. She smiled quietly, knowing that her fear had been transformed into wisdom, courage, and leadership. When she returned to the camp, the tribe was settled for the night. The children slept close to their parents, and the elders shared quiet conversations about the day's journey. Nanton watched over them, feeling both pride and relief. She knew that the journey had been challenging, but it had also strengthened the bonds of the tribe. They had learned to trust one another, to move carefully, and to rely on knowledge and courage rather than fear. The next morning, the sun rose again, casting a warm glow through the trees. Nanton helped the tribe prepare to continue their journey. She encouraged them to move carefully, to observe the signs of the forest, and to stay close together. Each step brought new discoveries, edible plants, animal tracks, and small streams that could provide water. The forest, once a place of fear, had become a teacher, guiding them safely through its paths. As the days passed, the tribe continued their journey, learning more about the land and themselves. Nanton guided them through hidden trails, rocky outcrops, and dense underbrush. She taught the children how to move silently, find food, and recognize signs of danger. She taught the adults strategies for avoiding threats and finding safety. Each lesson strengthened the tribe, giving them confidence, resilience, and unity. Finally, after weeks of careful travel, the tribe reached a wide valley with abundant water, plants, and natural shelter. Nanton paused at the edge of the clearing, observing the land carefully. She smiled quietly, knowing that they had found a place where they could settle safely, at least for a while. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had also been a time of growth, learning, and courage. The tribe gathered together, grateful for the safety and abundance of the valley. Children ran to the streams, laughing and playing, while the adults began setting up a small, hidden camp. Nanton moved among them, helping where needed and offering guidance. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment, knowing that her leadership, courage, and careful planning had guided them to this safe place. As night fell over the valley, Nanton sat quietly by a small fire. She looked at the stars shining above the trees, reflecting on the journey and the lessons she had learned. She realized that true strength did not come from weapons or protection, but from courage, knowledge, and the bonds of community. She had faced fear, guided her tribe, and discovered resilience within herself she had never known existed. The forest, the river, and the land had been her teachers, and through them she had grown stronger, wiser, and more confident. She knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she also knew that with courage, vigilance, and unity, the tribe could face them. Nanton smiled quietly, feeling hope and determination in her heart. The journey had changed her, and the lessons she had learned would guide her and her people for years to come. As the fire burned low and the tribe settled into a peaceful sleep, Nanton closed her eyes, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction and connection. The river that had once filled her with fear, the forest that had tested her courage, and the tribe that had relied on her guidance all came together in a quiet moment of triumph. She had learned that even when one feels exposed, vulnerable, or afraid, true protection comes from courage, knowledge, and the bonds of family and community. Nanton knew that tomorrow would bring more movement, more learning, and new experiences. But she also knew that they had survived, grown, and found strength together. The forest, with all its beauty and challenges, had become a place of life, teaching, and protection. And Nanton, once afraid and vulnerable at the river, had become a guide, a protector, and a source of hope for her tribe. With the stars above and the forest around them, the tribe slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, knowing that they were safe. Nanton sat quietly by the fire one last time, reflecting on the journey. She whispered softly to herself, "We have survived, we have learned, we have grown." And in that moment, she felt a quiet joy and certainty that they would continue to thrive, guided by courage, unity, and respect for the land that had nurtured them.